A young raccoon is in a tight spot.
So what I'm going to try to do is poke him out to you.
A cold winter snaps a colony of bats out of hibernation.
He's a long shot. He might not be releasable.
And an orphaned killdeer is introduced to himself.
We often get these little babies in on their own, so they will actually look in the mirror and think that there's another killdeer with them.
It's known as the city within a park. The Greater Toronto Area is home to one of the most diverse urban wildlife populations in North America. Here, more than 6 million busy humans live alongside 350 different species of wild animals. When wildlife clashes with urban life, it's usually the animals who lose. That's when Toronto Wildlife Centre steps in, saving animals one day at a time. This past year, Toronto Wildlife Centre has admitted 10 times more bats than in previous years. And though some people are fearful of these animals, bats are actually quite shy and harmless and are critical to a healthy ecosystem on our planet. But unfortunately, sometimes individuals or even entire colonies can be displaced or injured due to sickness or human activity. In colder temperatures, this can be a paralyzing experience for the bats. Extreme cold is uncomfortable for most of us, but for brown bats, it's a matter of life and death.
Bats have a very specific temperature tolerance. And so what happens with these guys is over a certain temperature, they're very active, they're awake, they're metabolically active, meaning that they have a lot of energy. When the temperatures start to drop, they involuntarily go into a state of torpor, or basically their metabolic rate and their general metabolism slows down. At that point in time, they can't fly.
Lisa Fosco, the center's wildlife rehabilitation manager, is getting ready to test fly a group of bats that were brought in after having been displaced from the location where they had been hibernating.
So I have like 50 bats in this room. All were aroused from hibernation early. What happens when they're woken up is that they start flying around and burning off all the energy that they really need to stay throughout the rest of their hibernation.
Because the bats will be flying loose in the room, only people who are vaccinated against rabies are allowed to come in for the bats assessment.
You do have to, in order to enter a room with bats, you do have to have your full set of rabies immunizations. So unfortunately, without that, you wouldn't be able to enter this room right now. But luckily, we have a one-way window in this room. This is one of the rooms that's in our viewing hallway, so you can actually see some of our handling and our flight testing from outside the room.
Bats are able to sneak into very small holes. So in a specially sealed room, Lisa and her assistant begin their assessment. One of the bats came in with wing injuries. His injuries may be too severe for him to recover.
Oh, this is Chin Guy. Okay. He might not be releasable. Basically, we wanted to give him time because some of them can fly with that. You know, the options were euthanize him on intake because of these wing injuries or give him a chance, but he's a long shot.
Lisa decides to give him a chance.
And we knew this at the beginning. So, I mean, they can fly with surprising deficits. Okay.
Do you want to give him the first launch then?
Yeah, so.
But he doesn't take off. Without the slightest attempt at flight, Lisa is concerned about his prognosis for survival in the wild.
Look at this. So see these dry wingtips? See those? That's bone at the end. I don't know if it's going to work, but
Yeah, I see.
yeah. So I'm going to launch him over this in case it doesn't work. The other thing is he doesn't want to launch.
But then he does a sort of a mini launch.
He deserves a chance.
And he will get one. Lisa is not the type of rehabilitator who gives up easily.
Okay, I'm just writing this on here because I'll forget. So we'll get back to him.
Now, on to the next patient.
Okay, next is 258.
At Toronto Wildlife Centre, animals aren't given names unless they come in groups of 50.
Oh, this is Lyle. We flew him yesterday.
Did we?
Yeah, but he'll look great. He's also kind of chunky. Yeah, he's one of the handsome bats. I really like this guy. He's been here all winter, and he is ready to go. We were exercising him, and we took him off of it because he was flying so well that he didn't need it.
Okay. There you go.
Okay, go ahead, launch him again. He doesn't know this space.
The bats who fly easily will be quickly released. Lisa is hoping Lyle qualifies as one of those bats.
It's funny because he actually prefers the hallway. Okay, Lyle, come on. I'm confused why he's not taking longer laps.
Lyle is flying, but not for long enough. They'll need to reassess him in a larger enclosure where they can get a better look at how well he's actually flighted.
Okay, want to grab the next one?
2 down, 48 more to go. Each of the bats will get the same thorough assessment. Some will be quickly released. Some may need to undergo more medical treatment. The rehab team is working hard to give all the bats the best chance at getting back into the wild. Andrew White and Stacy Freeman from Toronto Wildlife Centre's rescue team have just arrived in Halton Hills, a small community nestled on the western edge of the Greater Toronto Area. They've received a call about a young and possibly injured raccoon stuck between 2 walls on an apartment balcony.
I'll go in like 5 seconds before you. I'll block the hole, then you go in. He'll go for the escape route. He'll see me. He'll go deflect right back into your net, I think. So this should be pretty straightforward. I will leave the kennel cab at the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah.
And then if you get him, go, I got him, and I'll run in with the kennel cab.
Okay.
So wait until I give you a signal from here, okay? Okay, he's in the corner. I got him guarded. It's our game now. So what I'm gonna try to do is poke him out to you. She ready? Okay.
Okay, got him.
Andrew quickly joins Stacy on the balcony.
You want to get him in the kennel?
The raccoon has been caught, but the rescue isn't over. Now the team has to safely get him out of the net. They're not sure if this young raccoon is badly injured, and they don't want to risk further harm.
Just start working the netting. You do the door. Perfect. Poor little guy.
Even though he's just little, I'm still like,
Yeah, me too. He's even smaller than I expected when we got up to him.
Though Andrew and Stacy are highly experienced at capturing raccoons, dealing so closely with the wild animal is always unpredictable.
Perfect. Good job. So I would rate this rescue as a successful. It was fairly simple rescue. However, every rescue can become difficult very quickly. If you miscalculate any of your moves and the animal takes a different move, it can really change. You know, we're next to the highway here and lots of roads and lots of vehicles traveling. So we had thought ahead and blocked the exit route for the raccoon, and he pretty much didn't have anywhere to go without going through our nets.
This young raccoon is headed back to the center where Lisa can get a closer look at him. The team isn't sure how he was separated from his family, and they're concerned that he's injured. Leaving him out in the urban wild is not an option. Beth Pilesticker is a veterinary technician at Toronto Wildlife Centre. Today, she's working with an unusual but still quite a common bird for the Greater Toronto Area.
We have an orphaned baby killdeer that's in care who I am going to check now and see what his body condition is, how he's eating, and decide if we need to start offering him more food or if he's on the right plan as he is right now, and go from there. Killdeer are very interesting. They're little birds that run around on the ground. They like gravel areas. So they also nest on the ground. So people often think the babies are orphaned because they'll be running around and they're not flying away, but it's just their natural way of being.
In fact, hatched with their eyes wide open, these precocious little birds are born to run, literally. It's the first thing they do as soon as they escape the egg.
They're very precocial, so they should start eating on their own quickly as long as you give them the right food and the right habitat to kind of do their thing in.
Killdeer can be crafty. Often people think they need help when they're actually perfectly fine.
And the mother killdeer will pretend she has a broken wing to try and lure predators away from the nest.
Baby killdeer are in grave danger if they become separated from their parents. While this little orphan seems perfectly healthy, his chances for survival aren't guaranteed.
They're actually incredibly difficult to rehab. When we get in baby killdeer, they're just very fragile young little birds. So we generally found out that we have to give them a ton of heat, which is very interesting. So we have, this giant heat lamp and a heat pad and the whole works on this tiny little bird. And it's the best way to keep them alive.
Beth is worried that despite all her efforts, this little guy may be suffering from an identity crisis.
They need to know that they're a killdeer and think that they are with other killdeer.
So Beth has placed a mirror inside his enclosure.
We often get these little babies in on their own, so it's always good to give them a mirror, and it keeps them company, so they will actually look in the mirror and think that there's another killdeer with them in their enclosure.
This baby killdeer is growing up fast, and it won't be too long before he can be released. But first, it's time for a checkup.
Okay, so I'm just going to try to catch this little guy. He's getting to an age where he could be flighted very soon, so I just want to be careful that he doesn't fly out of his house. And he's quite fast, so we'll see how this goes. Good. So now that I have him, I'm just going to feel his body condition and see how he's doing. And he feels pretty good, which is nice. So we're doing a good job raising him up. And then I'm just going to take a little look at his feathers, make sure they're coming in nicely. And these look good. And then I'm going to put him into his box and get a weight on him and see if he needs some more food offered or if he's okay with what he has.
His weight is good, but Beth plans to make some changes to his diet.
I would like to see him a little chubbier, so we're going to start giving him a little more food and see how he does with that. He is still going to remain in this enclosure for another week or so, and then we'll upgrade him to a bigger house, bigger enrichment, more stuff to do. Just a little more food and time, and he should be great. Great for release, ready to go.
It's hard to believe this delicate creature can make such a shrill sound. But it's actually where the name comes from. Listen carefully, and you may be able to hear the word killdeer. This young raccoon may be trying to express a few choice words of his own.
So this raccoon he was with his family traveling around on the rooftops, and he got wedged. He's also kind of aggressive. He's just scared. He's a teenager, and he's just really scared, so it's coming out as aggressiveness.
It's been a few days since this raccoon was brought in by the rescue team. During this time, he hasn't eaten a thing.
We've been on some serious plans to try to get him to take food, and so far we haven't found too much that succeeded, so that's why I just wanted to try to sit down and actually manually feed him. He's just really weak. A lot of the damage was to his skull and his neck.
Just by looking at him, you wouldn't think he's dealing with broken bones. But wild animals are very good at concealing injuries and pain.
He's got a fracture in his face and his skull. It's causing some issues with his eye, but he's also got some issues. We can't find anything on his x-rays, but he's having a hard time with his jaw and with swallowing. So there's nothing radiographically visible, but there's clearly issues there. So just trying to kind of get him over the hump.
You can't put a cast on a raccoon's head.
Generally, if they have a fracture in their skull, it's just a waiting game. We wait for them to heal, put them in a cage where they're not going to fall or create any damage, just basically cage rest. A fractured skull isn't as bad as some of the other fractures that we see.
Unfortunately, despite eating today for the first time, this young raccoon still isn't ready to leave the center.
Well, he was originally up to be looked at for release, just because, his eye's looking better, and he's of a good age and he's feisty, but then, so we had to look at him. He's absolutely, positively not a candidate.
So it looks like this little guy will be staying here a bit longer, where they can monitor his injuries and give him some time to heal. It's not ideal, but Lisa believes it's for the best. Being in captivity presents a lot of challenges and disadvantages for a young raccoon, or any animal. But sometimes disadvantage doesn't mean demise. Meet Van Gogh.
Around here, if you get a name, you earned it, and we fondly call him or refer to him as Van Gogh. This is a bat that came into us in the winter in good body condition with the rest of the colony, and he's missing one entire ear. So for us, it's really important to see a bat that was surviving just fine in the wild and able to feed and forage the same as the rest of his colony with this type of handicap.
Van Gogh is one of a colony of bats that Lisa is assessing in the hopes of releasing them in good health while the weather is still warm enough.
The belief among the experts was that a bat with an ear issue wouldn't survive in the wild because they can't echolocate or find food.
To echolocate is to determine the location of something by measuring the time it takes for an echo to return from it. He may have survived in the wild without an ear, but in captivity, he developed another problem.
He developed a swollen wrist inside the caging, so this is something that we want to make sure that we can work with him and resolve. Unfortunately, he's been healing really, really slowly, and we're in a situation now where we're running out of summer. So we need to try to kind of get him speeded up in his recovery, or he's not going to make it out for the end of the season.
Bats need the fall period to set up for hibernation. Their bodies are not equipped to survive the cold temperatures, and Lisa doesn't want any of them to have to stay at the center over the winter.
Face him toward me because I want to see his wrists. Okay, and then actually go ahead and restrain him. Okay, let's do an extension on the other wing so we can see if he's responding to that. So tonight, once it gets a little bit darker, we'll fly him. Okay. I feel like the swelling has gone down, but he's still a little bit sensitive in that side. The other day, that was worse. So I just don't want to push him to fly until we know that it's comfortable. But considering that it's getting late in the season, it's kind of becoming a time issue, so great. We'll see. I think it's more hopeful than it was.
It's the kind of results she wants to see. For the past few days, this bat's treatment has been fast-tracked to give him a better chance at release.
If we don't get a hibernating animal out of here by about the beginning of fall, then we lose the ability to get him out of here until next spring. So at this point, we're kind of pushing him along, trying to get the swelling down, get him more comfortable, and hopefully we can recondition him in enough time to get out for this year.
Lisa is hoping to clear as many of the bats as possible for release. The center is no place for a hibernating bat. But time is running out.
So you've taken a couple views of Killdeer this morning.
Beth and Heather, the center's head vet, are looking at an x-ray of a killdeer who's now ready to move to an outdoor enclosure. It's the last step before release. But so far, the team hasn't been able to determine whether this guy can actually fly.
So I personally didn't see anything on it. He looked really good.
Okay. And I guess we're mostly concerned then about his wings and his shoulders, just to make sure that there's no problems that we haven't detected that would cause him not to be able to fly.
Yes, it just seemed like a good idea since people were not sure if his flight was excellent or not.
Yeah. You do see a killdeer on the ground a lot. You think that maybe they're a ground bird, but they do fly and they do need to be able to fly. So this is something that's important for him as part of his release. We'll be evaluating the whole picture today, so making sure his body condition's okay and that his feather condition's okay and that he's waterproof. And these are all things that are important for our wildlife when they're going to be released.
It's the end of the summer and the pressure is on to get this killdeer released.
It's important to get this guy back out into the wild before their migration, so we do have a limited amount of time to get him back out. Those who miss their migration and we can't release them, they will have to stay over the winter with us and we'll have to keep them in captivity.
And staying at the center for the winter is just about the worst thing that can happen to this type of bird.
There's some wild birds that are just too high stress and they can't be kept in captivity for an extended amount of time. They end up damaging themselves in the housing, and basically no matter what you do, they won't eat, and it becomes a big problem.
With his x-rays done, it's time to move this guy to a new outdoor enclosure.
What's your plan on flying him?
I think we can take him out and look at his toe and spritz him a little bit to check his waterproofing, and then probably just give him a little toss and see how he flies to the ground.
We're going to get the killdeer out and have a look at him. There was a report that he had hurt a toe, so I'm going to look at his toe, make sure there's no problems there. Still in here?
Yeah, it's right there. He just has a little scrape.
Yeah, he's got like an abrasion on the top. That doesn't seem to be a problem for him now. Seems to be healing well. Then it's going to be a matter of just kind of spritzing him with some water. So we want to make sure that he's waterproof, which just make sure his feather condition is okay, so that if it rains on him, he won't get really wet when he's released. So that's something we always like to make sure. So for a bird to be waterproof, their feathers need to interlace, and they have to have all the right feathers. So if they're missing some feathers, so sometimes there's feathers missing, if there's some oil on the feathers, which prevents them from being waterproof, then the water can get underneath the feathers and actually go along their body, and they get quite wet, and then they can get cold. So this is quite a concern. So that's what we're going to make sure today, that he's okay. You can see the water beading on his feathers. It's a great indication that his waterproofing is good. It just runs off. And the feathers below that are going to be dry. And that's the way feathers are supposed to function. Okay.
Okay, and then we want to see...
It looks pretty good. And so I'll just look down there. It looks great. Like his feathers below, you can see, are nice and dry. Let's just see how he walks and how he extends his wings. Now that he's wet, he might not fly as well as he could have otherwise, but we'll just give him a bit of a toss. Yeah, it's very hard to evaluate their flight in a small cage. They're very good runners and very comfortable on the ground. But he's holding his wings in great position, and the x-rays are fine.
It's a tough decision, but with migration season looming ahead, Heather and Beth decide to err on the side of freedom.
Well, I think that the way he's holding his wings, I think he's okay to go.
Yeah, he flops to the ground really well.
Yeah, and then there's always, when they release him, there's always that opportunity, if he's not flying, that they could probably recatch him again. I think they can probably evaluate his flight at that time as well, so I feel good about releasing him.
Every day, the lives of these animals are in the hands of the rehabilitation experts, and every single factor is carefully considered. A chance at a good life is not a small part of the decision process.
It would be really upsetting to have to keep them for an extended amount of time. They do best in the wild, they do best if they're able to migrate, so it's always kind of hard if we have to keep them for a long time. They're not really happy here, so we'd like to get them out and get them back with other killdeer.
So later that day, Stacy Freeman brought the little killdeer back to the marshy location where he was found and set him free. If there was still any doubt about his ability to fly, it's gone now. Getting the animals back into their natural habitat is always the goal at Toronto Wildlife Centre. And over in a different part of the GTA, Sarah Castillo is doing just that with a bat. Sarah, a member of the rescue and release team, is getting ready to release one of the bats who has recently got the all clear from Lisa. This bat was displaced from his hibernaculum in this church after a nasty cold snap last winter. Now it's time to go home, and Sarah is hoping he'll find a place here to prepare for the hibernation period.
From here, I can't do anything else. He makes that decision.
The best type of release is when an animal makes the decision to leave on its own. But this bat doesn't seem ready to fly.
So, things like that happen.
One common way to release a bat is to give him a little nudge.
Come on, get some air. They do that. Sometimes they'll just circle and literally just keep going higher and higher, which is why it's nice to do it in this light, because you can see where they're gonna fall, pick them up, try again.
Sarah isn't ready to give up. She knows it can often take several attempts before the launch is successful. And then, finally, he's off.
Because I didn't get him up, I like to get him nice and high when I release them, I chose to throw him, which gives him that extra height. So as he's coming, his wings are starting to go, and you saw he was getting more and more air as he was going.
It's been a long summer of rehabilitation for all of the bats at the center. Over the next few days, the rest of the healthy ones will be released, just in time for hibernation season. After that, survival will be up to them.
It was great. Bats know where they're going. This is his home, and it really looked like he was making that decision as to where home is, so it looks like he went home.
It was really great after his first couple of not so great flights. You could tell he's making those decisions as to where he wants to go, and obviously somewhere around here is home. And
it might not be where we thought, but I mean, this is all part of where he hunts. This is his hunting ground. This is home.